Today I'm going to be doing some street painting. Fancy people like to call it plein air painting. Plein air is just French for open air. Yeah, you're just basically painting outside. Get outside and touch grass. But if you're new to plein air and you've never done it before, it can be kind of intimidating. So I'll walk you through some of my gear and some of my process, and hopefully it'll help you get started. This is just a standard camera tripod. It has an adjustable head. The head is attached to the back of my easel so that it can easily rotate. It's very convenient for travel. You can pack up the legs, you can carry it easily, and you can adjust the placement of the canvas. Daybreak easel is a bit of a cheaper option than some of the bigger brands, but fair warning, does come with a little work. You have to put it together, and you also have to sand it and stain it and seal it before using. This is my palette box. It's what I use to mix up my paint and hold some of my utensils. Some painters use what's called a pochade box. They can be convenient because they hold both your palette and your canvas holder all in one compact box. I do not like that because they are only good for smaller paintings. My Daybreak easel can hold a much bigger painting, so I can go small or I can go bigger if I choose to. Plus there's more room to mix paint on the palette. This little container holds my mineral spirits, and that just helps me clean out my brushes. I always carry a bag with me for trash, and then I hang it between the clips of my legs on my tripod, and that way I've just got a bag that's not blowing away where I can throw my paper towels in after I clean out my brushes. The colors that I use for my palette changes depending on what I'm painting. I always have all my paints with me in the box, and then when I'm looking at the scene, I kind of choose the colors I want to use. So my palette does change a bit. Sometimes I use black, sometimes I don't. Most of the other colors I use regularly. I don't always use the purple, but I do like to use that for shadows sometimes. I feel like it helps bring some vibrancy to the shadows. This is a viewfinder that I also keep in my box and I use regularly. It just helps me see the scene and what it's going to look like on the canvas, and helps me to make a better composition. I always keep a couple different sized panels in my backpack so that I can choose what fits the scene best. But whatever panel I'm carrying, I've already gessoed it and toned it to a mid color so that I can very clearly see my lights and darks accurately. Once I've found my composition through my viewfinder, I just draw it out and have some sort of sketch to work with before I lay in color. I usually start with the sky, and most of the time I will mix 3 different gradients of blue. So I'll start with a darker blue, and that's going to be either cobalt or ultramarine blue, and a little bit of white, and that's going to be the highest point of the sky. And then I'll take a touch of that mixture, pull it off to the side, put just a tad of phthalo blue and some white, and that'll be more of the mid blue. And then for the horizon, working down, I take some of that mixture and put even more white and possibly even more phthalo in it. I love using phthalo for the sky. It just makes the sky more vibrant. So when I'm putting in my first layer of color, I am thinning it down a little bit with mineral spirits. I'm not using a ton of mineral spirits. I'm just dabbing my brush in the mineral spirit, then the color, and then mixing it around the canvas. I just work that way very thinly until I get all of it covered, and then I'll go in later without the paint thinner and put thicker strokes of paint over the top of it. Now I'm going to start working on the trees and greenery. And I start with the darker colors. It's going to be just the sap green with maybe a touch of blue. And I think I used a little bit of purple to dull down the chroma just a bit. After I lay in the darkest parts of the green, I mix some cad yellow into the sap green and go over it in a little bit lighter green color. Careful not to go over the dark spots that I already put in. And then later on, I will actually go in and reinforce those dark spots even more. And now I'm working on the lighter side of the buildings that are being hit more directly by the sun. And I've already mixed up two different colors, the light side and the shadow side. And I think I used a little bit of yellow ochre and white, and then also just a small bit of burnt sienna to warm it up a little bit so that it looks like the sun is hitting it. I'm still at the point where I'm just blocking things in, and I'm just trying to get the values right and the basic colors right. There's time to worry about details later, so don't get ahead of yourself. Just take it slow. Let the painting fill in naturally as you go. I've got a much warmer color here, made up primarily of burnt sienna. I think there may be a little bit of yellow ochre in there as well. Now I'm working on the gray colored steeples. I've got a shadowed side here where I'm going to put in the darks. I didn't show you on camera, but I did pre-mix 3 colors, kind of like I did with the sky. So I have a darker gray and a mid-tone gray and a lighter gray. And I'm just going to fill in the darks first, then go to the mid-tone, and then put in the lighter colors last. And it should look like there's a shadow side and then there is the sun hitting the lighter side. Very simple. For that color, I did use the lamp black instead of trying to mix my own black. Sometimes it's good to have the black. You know, I don't want a dirtied up gray color for the steeple. It's a very clean gray looking steeple. And so to mix up my own black with blue and brown or green and red just would muddy it up a little bit. And so to have the lamp black on hand for this mixed with some white, I think maybe I did use a little bit of purple in that mixture as well, so that it wasn't a completely dead color. Again, I like using the purple in shadowed areas. And I'm going to fill in a lot of the roof here. And you'll see later I actually go in and I alter the painting a bit from what I'm seeing in front of me, just because I don't feel that it's reading correctly. You're the artist, you know, so whatever you need to do to make the painting work. I'm still filling in the painting, just finishing up the roof area. Now I'm just thickening some of the paint in a few places in the sky and in the front building. Now I'm putting in the shadowed color of the building. Pretty much filled in, and I'm going to start working on things like edges. I'm going to soften this edge here. Some of the edges I might actually make more defined, But a lot of these edges, I will soften around the edges so that they don't look so harsh, and it kind of looks like one color fades into another. It just looks more natural that way. Now I'm adding some holes in the top of it so that it looks like the building can be seen through it. I'm mixing a little bit of burnt sienna and blue together to make my own black, but I want it to be a little bit warmer. I want to make sure I have a little bit more brown than I do blue in this mixture, because this is going to be used for the brick building that's in the foreground. To check the color, I mix some white in with it, and I can see whether or not it leans more blue or more brown that way, and it does lean a little bit more brown. So I'm going to go ahead with that, start working in some of the details in the building. I'm going to do the windows. For this, I'm using a stick that helps me steady my hand. I don't usually pull this out until I'm doing these kinds of things where straight lines are needed. And right now, that color that I mixed to check the color of my dark mixture, I'm just using to lighten up the window area. I'm going to go in and define the outline of the windows a bit. As I'm filling in the details, I just am not liking the way that the side of the building is looking. I just feel like it's a very complicated thing to read, and so I start to adjust some things, and I start to decide that I'm just gonna make this an extension of the roof, and then I put some extra angles in to make it look like there's more of a structure there. I'm not sure if it works, but I personally think it looks better than what was in front of me. So then I fill in some more details, windows, and just slowly build upon things until I feel like I have something that looks convincing. But I also don't want to overdo it with the details. Part of what I wanted to accomplish today was finishing the painting on location. I have a tendency to start a painting on location, but then take it home and finish up the details and overwork it a little bit. And I wanted to create something that was just detailed enough that I was happy with it, but not overdone. So I'm kind of adjusting my standards with this painting. I'm just gonna try to be happy with whatever I create. And now I've just darkened in some of the spots. I'm putting in some extra touches like branches and some textures. And then in some of the foliage, I'm putting in holes to make it look like the building is showing through. I'm just adding a little bit more depth and layer to it. And also adjusting some of the warmth of the colors and trying to provide variation between all the different greenery and foliage so that it doesn't just look like one big blob of green stuff. A lot of the painting process is just building on it until you have something that works. And no doubt, plein air can be intimidating. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. So I hope that seeing my setup and gear and some of my painting process has been helpful to you. just know that when you go out for your first few times, you're probably not going to be entirely happy with the result. Repetitions and doing it makes you better. It's kind of like going to the gym and building muscles. It doesn't happen immediately, so be okay with the process of it.
Here's the finished piece. About 2 hours on location. I challenged myself to finish this in one sitting, so I'm not going to take this home and mess with it anymore. It's finished the way it is. Don't forget to subscribe. Come out with me painting again. And yeah, I'm going to call this one finished and move on to the next one.